Surprise! Welcome to the Andrew Hilton Beer Tasting. I'm Eric.
And I'm Craig.
And we are here instead of Kyle because Kyle is sick. Kyle is not feeling well. And he has tested positive for COVID. We wish him all the best. Hang in there. You'll be back up here in no time. But that is why we are being more mindful. Masks are back on the crew. Masks are on us until it's time to have a sip. And just want all of you to be safe out there. Put those masks on.
Yeah.
Take it easy, everybody.
Walk on.
Here we go.
All right. So the subject of tonight's beer tasting are the cans that can make you feel like Andre the Giant. The 330 milliliter cans.
You're huge.
Yeah, you know, you could get one in a hand and crush it. Anyway, all the way from Denmark.
Or San Diego.
Or San Diego.
Says
or,
brewed in Belgium. We'll get to that.
There's lots of different places that this particular brew may have come from.
We've got some stuff to talk about.
We do. We've got lots to talk about tonight, but before we get going any further, let's crack the little guys open and get a little in our glass.
This is the Evergreen that we're starting with. This is the, what do they call it? Session Ale. Session IPA, even. I'll let you pour it, because it might be a...
All right, so at 3.5% alcohol, this is it's light, and I'm not being outrageous with the pour, but you will notice this with all the beers tonight. Head retention is a thing. It's extremely light.
Tiny, tiny, tiny bubbles.
Not much body going on. Not that you're going to expect that kind of thing from a beer at 3.5% alcohol. It's just not had any touching of the malt.
I got a big papaya that I didn't before.
Yeah, this isn't, you know, the nose isn't as offensive as the first tasting. Some of these beer are a little bit old, people. This is what we're trying to hint at.
We're learning a lot as we try and bring these beers in from further and further away.
Yeah. Okay, so it's a session beer. You're meant to drink a lot of it. So that's very many little cans. Very many little cans. I can only when I first tasted this beer the other night, the first thing I thought about was sitting in a canoe fishing. And this would be the beer that'd be on the stringer that you can just sort of pull off and drink all day and
3.5
never get a buzz. Anyway, it's a very light session IPA. I'm wondering where the IPA part is coming in. I have almost no perceptible hops. If anyone wants to join
there's
in the
some
fun.
floral. There's some fruit.
The nose is not offensive.
Oh, Devin's saying that these just came up last week on the listings.
Okay, so
this will be educational, Devin. Hang in there.
So we were both Eric and I were interested in trying out the brewery as soon as it popped up. We haven't seen any of this Mikkeller stuff around for quite a while. It has very distinctive artwork, and it would feature pretty large. They were really early in the craft brew scene in Europe. So one of the pioneers for this sort of thing. Same story. So if you go to the website, you're going to read the exact same story that you read for every single craft brewery on planet Earth, which is, people get together, decide that the beer that they're drinking is swill, and think that they can do better in a bathtub. And then, it turns out maybe they can, and it sort of progresses from there into a business, and these folks are now all the way around the world.
The other reason that folks talked about Mikkeller very quickly when it came out in the early aughts, I think the first time I saw them on the shelf was maybe 2010, 2011, was the artwork. Keith Shore was the graphic artist they hired to design the first bottles, and it became so connected to the brand that he's basically an employee. They brought him on. He is their designer. Everything that comes out of Mikkeller is drawn by Keith Shore's team now, which was really unique. I can't think of any other brewery that was doing something similar, and it really shook things up when you looked at a shelf in 2010, 2012.
Yeah, this would have been an absolute sort of earth-shattering change-up to see something quite as radical as that.
It was also famous for being a gypsy brewery, which we're all using a less racist term, calling them contract brewers now. And they are still calling it that, if that is a sign of some of the things we have to talk about. Contract brewers are brewing in somebody else's established brewery, and the Mikkeller team would kind of hop around the world. It's the impression I got with brewing in different places. So that was part of the kind of shtick, was that it was a Mikkeller label, a Mikkeller beer, but it would always be unique as to where it was brewed. They didn't settle down until 2016 when they opened up the brewery in San Diego, of all places. And so they're Copenhagen, San Diego, stuff in Belgium, stuff in London.
Yeah,
it's
all over Europe. There's
weirdly scattered,
and they have brew pubs, and so all of that kind of stuff that you can now see sort of coming into the Alberta market, where the brewery started, and then all of a sudden there's a food service attached to it, and now there's the collabs are leading to that. There's a contract brewing element there, and then that's sort of growing out. It's just history repeating itself. These guys were at it 10, 12 years ago, a little bit longer. So you can just watch the way that business has developed. So now they're worldwide. But as we can taste with the first beer, it's meant for a mass market. Like, I think just to be fair to the beer, I think that needs saying that this is mass market appeal. Lots of people are going to sit down and drink this and enjoy it. As I was talking to Eric before we went on camera, and I said, this is one of the things that we are starting to forget. Bring yourself back 4 years ago, Lethbridge audience. Try to find a reasonable beer. Like, we're not walking into Andrew Hilton, but walking into just anywhere, into a restaurant, into any old place, and it would be hard to find a beer of the quality that you're getting today from Alberta breweries, which must be, given that these are the Euro folks and everyone loves them globally, we must be pretty good on a world scale, I guess.
When I first saw Mikkeller or tried Mikkeller, we were seeing amazing graphic art on a beer that came from Europe. And at the time, to have beer from Europe meant you were getting beer from people who knew what they were doing, who they were the people to get beer from. And that just is no longer the case in Copenhagen, at least. But that is definitely not the case in Alberta. And so when you say quality, what are we talking about when it's not just a question of, do I like how it tastes?
No, it would be like one of the things that I had to look up as soon as I started pouring these last night was the head retention gets more epic as we go further on down the line, to the point where it'll actually be in your glass at the end as a ball almost. And then you look up and you go, what causes head retention? Because I don't have Kyle to torture right now with my questions in the comments section going, Kyle, stop telling us about some irrelevant thing. Let's get on to the science of head retention, which sounds very much like we're not talking about beer, but this is a family show, people. So anyway, when you get onto these,
Not really.
Where are you going? Back on track.
when you get onto the topic, then you find out it's additives and other things that they're adding in order to get the head to stay in the glass and to stay on the beer, because the idea is that having the foamy bubbles is going to be delivering the aromatics to your nose, so that's why it's important. But I found there was lots of adjuncts in it. Like it even when you look at it, like this was the beer I was making bad statements about before. I won't say what I was saying before. I don't know if I'm that brave, but okay, I will say what I was going to say before. But this is about the way things should be if you're well hydrated, if you know what I mean. It's very, very light, like almost imperceptible as beer. Moments. I'm just giving you something for the fun reel later.
No
Mark.
multivitamins involved.
But you go like it's almost clear. So there's not a whole lot. Anything that was in there that's malted is crystal malted, not even.
And as you're having a sip, how long is that flavor that you do get? How long is it sticking around? How long is that aftertaste? How long has it got your attention after you've drank it?
There and gone.
Yeah.
There and gone.
Yeah. Now, given it's 3.5,
you'd expect that.
Yeah.
So I can't be all multi-backbone about it. That's not acceptable in this particular tasting. And with less than 24 hours of notice, it's about all that we could do for the scramble on the research side. But yeah, you wouldn't expect that, right? So this is not. But compare it to others. I mean, I think this is interesting. I always think those things are interesting. You look for this, you go, okay, what are sessionable beers that we have right now available here at Andrew Hilton? You can come down and buy a 4-pack tonight. But it's things like you got, Blind Man Session Ale is right there. About the same alcohol content. We did a tasting just a few weeks ago where we looked at these low alcohol content beers, and there were many in there that were really, really good.
And still accessible.
And still
a
accessible
beer that someone new
absolutely
would still enjoy.
So what do we got for questions? Megan doesn't mind the beginning, which does mind the aftertaste. That would be familiar to almost anyone who's drunk beer that's old. We were discussing other things before the cameras rolled, and it had something to do with socks. And it's sort of that flavor. This one was best before, for my can, anyways, for our can, was January 6th. So we're way past this one's best before date. So this would have been brewed probably sometime back last fall, and then got on the slow boat or something. I have no idea how it got to Alberta, but it took a while. So that's the aftertaste. This is like the Snapchat of beer. It's a good one.
Terry's saying perfume. To my knowledge, I don't think there's no added fruit or...
It doesn't have an offensive nose. Like, I've got this in a different glass than I had it in last night. So if you're drinking this, I just had it in a regular glass last night, but this one's concentrating the up at the top just a little bit, because Kyle didn't leave his glass for me to steal. I'm pretty upset about that, really.
You probably shouldn't have drank from it anyway.
But it doesn't have a bad nose. There's sort of a little bit of pineapple, and that'll be the hops that got dashed over the top of it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But I think that's where it ended up. And then the bitterness is what kind of, over time, gets you stale socks. Like, it because it is bittering the beer, so then it's as that kind of...
Leaving a tea bag in for too long.
Yeah, it's all it is.
Yeah. All right.
Clock Kent says 12 minutes on
That's
this.
not bad.
The clock is back. So
let's pour our second
beer.
And then we're going to have to talk about Mikkeller.
Okay, so this is an India Pale Lager. Oh, I'm breaking the top. Not my first rodeo. Jeez, into the small glass.
Oh, goodness.
Oh my, like half a glass of...
That was a good pour. That was a good pour.
I said it was going to happen, folks.
Yeah. Like, looking at that color again. Yeah, we are.
Okay, so this has got nice color, actually. Like, for what it is.
Oh, I still have mine, so we can compare if anybody wants
look at the
to dial that in. So we're talking, what do they call it? An American lager?
This is an India Pale Lager, which just means they've dry hopped a lager. So again, on the nose, same hop profile actually as the first beer, this Evergreen. Sort of subtle pineapples.
I'm not getting any nose.
Sort of a musky melon.
Does that mean I got COVID in between the beers?
Get away, get away. Oh, John, sorry if my stale socks joke. I was going to talk about your hockey gloves, John, but it would have been about the same. So the nose on this one's not bad. And again, as a lager, you're expecting it to be that extra little bit sharp compared to the ale. It should be just that little bit sharper.
Very clean taste.
Right? Yeah, the lagering process should produce a little bit sharper beer generally.
And lagering process, or we're talking about temperature there, right?
Yeah, cold temperature, different yeast, right? So it's top fermenting, not a bottom fermenting yeast. It also doesn't age well. I would say that about lagers just generally. It doesn't matter if you're going to dry hop them or not. Like, best drunk fresh.
For the same reason?
Because there's nothing much to them. Okay. So they're just not going to stay with you. It's literally the reason that India Pale Ale was created.
And we've talked about how doing a great lager is a big challenge because it's unforgiving.
Yes, there's nowhere to hide.
Okay. And are we seeing a malt backbone? There's a bit thin there, eh?
Well, and there shouldn't be a ton of maltiness on this one. There should just be, shouldn't be that way.
So where's our color coming from?
The color is coming from the malt, but you can't really taste the malt. Okay. I'm getting lots of bitter, but again, I'm guessing this is going to be a European hop thing. And without Kyle here to bug me on that one, then that would be my guess, is that this is a European hop thing. So the hop profiles are a little old school, so not as bright and floral, not full of pine tar and other things that are kind of neat. Or
Terry says it smells like cabbage.
Let's go find the... I don't get that.
Nose is in, everybody.
I don't get cabbage on this. The nose is quite nice.
I think it's pleasantly bitter. Or do you think it is underbittered?
No, not for what it's supposed to be.
It's inoffensively bittered. How's that?
It has more bitter than you'd expect from a lager because they've specifically said they've gone ahead and hopped the thing. So, any other comments from the audience? Got to help us out today, folks. Because
Tyler's getting lots of bitter.
Lots of bitter. Yeah, there's lots of bitterness in it. Like it'd be interesting to know what the IBUs are, but I don't think that's on the can. Like the can is literally lacks information at an epic scale. It says there are ingredients, there is beer, and there's really neat artwork.
Transparency about recipes brings us to talking about Mikkeller's problem. So based on our estimation, about the time that the Evergreen here was brewed, Kate Bernot from goodbeerhunting.com has been doing some really strong labor writing about some of the problems going down with the Mikkeller company. And so we've talked about Brave Noise, we've talked about some of the Pink Boots projects and efforts that people are making to try and make breweries in particular, but also brew houses and tasting rooms safer, more inclusive spaces. Mikkeller has had a number of very serious allegations of misogyny and sexual assault, racism, and homophobia at their San Diego in particular was the name that kept coming up in the articles. But it certainly is clear now that it goes right to the top. So the Keller of Mikkeller has been away from the company. That founder is gone, but the other founder is, I'm say generously, being pushed out in some form. The company is making a very public effort to try and recover from this. They're even initiating a reconciliation program. It looks like there is a lot of work to do because a lot of the problems seem to be pretty close to the top. That's something that when we're choosing where we put our beer money and who we're drinking certainly plays a big role in decisions that we make. And I think that the role that Pink Boots and Brave Noise has with some of the amazing women brewers that we've had on this program have been fantastic, and it's been a real learning experience. So we really have to note the problems going on at Mikkeller. They claim to have a code of conduct now. They say they're working towards it, and so we look forward to seeing that happen. We're also noting that within Kate Bernot's reporting, as bad as the misogyny and Me Too stuff was, there were also some really outrageous claims about quality control issues between the breweries and right down to recipe to recipe. And that was really discouraging to read, especially given the brand recognition that Mikkeller has on the shelf. And so hopefully that is also part of their reconsideration of how they are running their business.
Well, it's when, yeah, it's when when small companies grow and there's problems. And it was addressed. The hard part is reading some of the letters. We're doing the research very quickly last night in order to bring you the tasting tonight. Doing the readings, and Eric and I are messaging back and forth going, okay, how are we going to address this? Well, elephants are in the room. If you went and Googled it, this is what you're going to find. There's a massive beer festival. It is Europe. So Europe has no problem bringing the protest. Okay. It's just the way they are. So there's all sorts of protests, all sorts of bad sort of feeling and blood about the thing. They have hired, I mean, to their credit, they have hired external consultants. So they're not saying, oh yeah, we'll deal with this internally. They're actually bringing people in order to deal with it. And I did have a messenger conversation with the San Diego folk this morning. Again, we're trying to bring you the best quality programming that we can here at Andrew Hilton. So we really did dig in and try to get the backgrounding done on this before we came on. But we also didn't want to be shy about it, because if you go and look it up, you're going to see it. And we're not going to try to say these things don't happen. It's 2022. We wish it didn't happen. But the only way you can say that it's not going to happen is by being truthful about it, being open about it. So there it is.
And we'll use that opportunity to talk about someone who's doing it right. The Brave Noise has been on the shelf for a few weeks now. There are 2 Brave Noise beers in Alberta to be had. They are only allowed to be brewed by breweries that are on the Brave Noise list. And the Brave Noise list is simply breweries who have publicly submitted and published their codes of conduct, not just for visitors and customers, but also for staff and management. If they are posting it transparently, they're being forthcoming about the efforts they're making to make their workplaces safe, they get to be on the Brave Noise list. This particular one is from Establishment in Calgary. There is only one other Alberta brewery on that list, and it's Troubled Monk out of Red Deer. That is also where brewer Bobby Cullum is based out of. And I know that a big part of Bobby's beer journey and experience has been working with Pink Boots and different groups to try and change craft beer culture for the better. And if you are trying to figure out a good place to put that money, then watch for that Brave Noise recipe. It's not just about promoting the list, but any of this sold in Alberta will go towards charities involved in making safe workplaces in Alberta.
Let's see all Alberta breweries actually get on that list. So
yes, rest of you, get on the list.
Get on the list. Just get on the list.
It's not that hard.
List. Yeah, all right. Now,
how's Clark Kent doing?
Clark Kent tells us we're currently averaging 11 minutes per beer, so we're doing a great job.
All right.
Great job. We're not going to Kyle speed date this one out the door. I mean,
he's not feeling well.
He's not feeling well.
Come on.
He's going to like that one, actually. I mean, if he was there, he'd give me the thumbs up. Okay, so I need to tip this glass a lot. Like, I'm going to have to almost make it vertical. I said it gets worse as we go down the list, and it does.
I will definitely not.
Nah, yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Go physics.
I found these almost impossible to not.
For an IPA, this is really weird, right?
It is. It is quite weird. And it's got to be adjuncts and other things in the brew that they're putting in there to ensure that it has brilliant head development and retention, which I find it weird for an IPA to do that. And I did look up all the I mean, John's on the tasting tonight, so he can correct the chemistry of it, but it's things like the long chain sugars are what does it with the CO2. So it's kind of encapsulating it all in there. But how much CO2 are you putting in a little can? It's just a little can. Like, did you think you were carbonating like the big tall boy?
They had to get it all the way from San Diego and or Belgium.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We think the distributor is Belgian because that's what's on the can. But you can't be sure. There's literally no way to know where it was packaged.
So I'm getting really
it's the
nice.
same
I'm
hop.
getting nice first tastes that I didn't get the first time I had this.
I would say though that's the same hop. Anyone want to disagree?
Yeah.
In the comments, folks. In the comments, light them up, folks. Like, come on.
This is
McGew, we're looking
Burst, the IPA that we're drinking, and I'm getting it again. I've got bowling alley ashtray in my mouth.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
It is.
Is it that bad? For you?
Yeah, it's pretty. I'm from Manitoba, so I'm going to slug it out and make it through to the end. But
I didn't mean to besmirch the reputation of bowling alley ashtrays.
Yeah, but I would say same hop on all 3 beers. Anyone want to argue with me on that one?
Chris is asking about a quick history of Mikkeller, and as we've demonstrated, we're not enjoying talking about Mikkeller all that much.
2005.
We did talk about it at the beginning.
A couple of guys decide. I mean, they're living across the street from the Carlsberg Brewery, and they decide they can make better beer than those guys. I mean, I don't know what gives you that kind of.
That was almost 15 years ago.
Yeah, 15, 17 years ago.
And that story, though, matches up with a lot of breweries who have started in the last 2 years in Alberta.
I would say, it aligns so nicely. Like, when I read the story, you could have easily cut and pasted that story and put it over top of any of the breweries that we routinely feature on the channel, right? Every single one of them has exactly the same stories. People meet, they decide that they can do better than the big brew houses. In Alberta, that was an absolute desert for craft beer. Kyle always tells the stories of him having to be on, beer trading things and, going down to the States just to get a beer. A crazy talk, right? Just things that you wouldn't expect these days. So these folks are in the same bin. All the beer, again, through the 90s when some of us were alive, kicking and drinking, it was all run by big multinationals, and it was industrial chemistry. That's what it was. So this is an improvement on industrial chemistry. But even when I read, like, if you read the talking points behind the India Pale, they'll say, like, get ready for a big shock of flavor. If you're living in Alberta in 2022 and you've been enjoying the products that have been produced by Alberta breweries, you're still waiting for the big shock of flavor. Like, it's
Now,
not there.
I'm happy to argue that the recipes that we're experiencing in Alberta are better than what we're drinking, but freshness is a huge part of it, isn't it? We are obviously very spoiled in that we are getting to consume these products within weeks of them being canned or bottled.
Well, and in Lethbridge,
kind of amazing.
Where we put Kyle in the van and we tell him to go to Calgary every week, whether he wants to or not, because we have to get we get the freshest beer, and I see it pushed out on people's socials from the breweries, and they have it here in the store, which is always amazes me. And then it's a scrap between McGew, myself, and Fitzpatrick, and a few of them, Eric, right, to see who can get down here and get one first.
The cabin, the 88, the establishment on the shelf is fresher than the cans that are in Edmonton.
Yeah.
And we know that just from the brewery's own social media about when those things become available and are when they're still waiting for it.
So we have them the same time as Calgary has them, but that's like through the effort of people who care.
That's amazing. And even just for people in Calgary, they're having fresher beer than people would have had 20 years ago, without question.
Oh, this is supposed to be due in August 8. There's no chance this is making it that long. It still tastes a little stale to me.
Yeah, I'm done.
It's a little bit, Anybody else? I got nothing on the chats tonight, folks.
This might still be the hop vlogger. Chris finding it pretty punchy for 4.7. Lingering more than some of the other ones we've had tonight. Reminds me of California Common. I'll admit, is that a style or a brand?
Not with you on that one.
No. Help us out there, Chris, with a little bit more context.
Yeah, I would say that
Tyler's not liking this one.
I think we're used to just IPAs generally that have more holding power. This one's in your mouth. You get nice bitter on the nose, then it's super bitter, and then there's nothing. There's nothing else. It's a very, very simple flavor profile. There's nothing in it. Nothing much.
I don't know the last time that I've had an IPA that was from Europe. And so have we got something going on there that we need to talk about? If not regional, then at least continental?
Very well could be. I mean, the New England IPAs, the West Coast IPAs, the No Coast IPAs, those are all North American developments. So we've taken a style and moved it on down the line. Again, how are we supposed to do this without everyone jumping in a plane, going to Europe, and ensuring that the can's fresh, which I think would be a bit excessive for beer. But, the stated objective for these guys is to be able to blow away wine on the table in Europe. And I'm like, I've had wine in Europe. This beer's not going to be able to displace the wine off the table, I'm afraid. No. So, again, maybe it's just an old school recipe. So that's kind of what it tastes like to me. It tastes like 15 years ago.
When we think about, what is it, Moosehead or Keith's IPA, is that a more fair comparison? Is that style?
If you have Keith's at the brewery, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it would be a more, a very kind of old school, again, that's my... Somebody's texting me. Stop texting me.
So Terry has a question. She's liking this a little more than she did yesterday. Is it unusual for a taste experience to change that much with the same product overnight?
Yes.
There's context. There's what have you eaten? What else have you had?
Can to can variation. There shouldn't be any. There's no way of telling when they bundled these up if they were all on the same date. You'll have to go check your cans.
Leave it open all night.
You might have left it
open.
open.
Your bubble gum out before you had.
For us, this beer is actually reasonably warm. We're under the lights, so it's getting a little hot in here. That's actually a good test of beer. Like for anyone who's truly crazy, if you can drink a beer warm, especially something that's in this sort of pale ale and lager category, then it's a good beer. If it needs to be chilled for you to be able to stomach it because it's so rank, that's a sign that maybe that beer's not all that great. So I would say that, can to can variation shouldn't be any. It's just on a canning line. They're producing it, unless the cans in the warehouse are coming from multiple batches, same label. Also really possible from what we've seen. Like there's 8 months of variation and due date in the first 3 beers. Okay, so that's pretty dramatic.
It's interesting what Aaron mentioned about was it open overnight, which was a joke. But once you open an IPA, that clock is ticking.
Yeah.
And so, for example, with some of the IPAs that are unique, that are on the growler bar, if I get a growler of an IPA, it's for consumption that day. It's not going into the fridge for the next day, or it's not going to be sticking around, it's getting sipped on during the week.
Yeah.
It's never going to hold up for that.
No. I mean, I've got my growler is pressurized and it will keep it fresh. But if you're just on a regular growler, no.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
It'll be stale. Like the oxygen will get in there and do nasty things to it every time.
And that's every beer to some
beer.
degree, but IPAs in particular. are
Well,
vulnerable.
because there's a lot of, I mean, what you're tasting is stuff that's going to be volatile, right?
Okay.
I mean, it's phenolics. It's not really phenolics, but again, John will correct my chemistry. That's what gives you the taste. It's the esters, the phenols, the other things that are in it, and they are going to oxidize very quickly. It's also the reason they don't age great. I mean, again, that was the idea, was you're going to bitter the heck out of it so that you can manage to get a beer to transport. It's the same reason we never got a bitter back to the home and native land for Eric and I. You never got a true pub style bitter because they just don't transport well. Like even if you're in the UK, you're drinking a regional beer. You're drinking a beer that was brewed in the brewery down the lane because you can't move it from city to city, even though you can, hit a chip shot between them because it just won't last.
Yeah.
Right? It would be not good.
Chris elaborates, reminds me a little of the Steamworks California Common with that sort of brown caramel malty flavor. And that's the IPA that we're talking about.
Okay.
I think. Is it, Chris? Is it the IPA or the lager that you were referring to?
I see where he's at now. That California is a style. We have had one or two on the tasting. I think we've had one that I remember, which was not that long ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. My problem with this beer is it is 5 something, like 5.5.
5.5, yeah.
It is 5.5 for a 5.5% beer. I would look at the malt bill for that, and I would think it was a bit pale. Like I know it's pale, but it is a pale ale. So a pale ale is everything up into, but not including porters. It's like a pale. It can have a little bit of range. Like okay, an ESB is in there somewhere, but pale doesn't mean devoid of flavor and lacking in color. Pale in that case would be a beer that at least has some maltiness to it to help out with the bitterness. Again, the idea behind that is to balance off the flavors, right? This one, to me, again, really an old school kind of taste profile. All right, we're good.
Check in with Clock Kent.
We're good.
Happy?
Clock Kent
All right.
tells us we're at our 11 minutes per beer.
Okay,
So it's a hard taskmaster.
here we go.
Last one.
Last one.
Okay, this is the
Midsummer
lager.
Dream Lager. How did E end up at the end?
There's a reason.
Whatever. All right.
There's a reason.
Okay. There's a reason.
I'm just wishing it was colder. There's not even any residual coldness on the can. It's like Eric did.
Chris comments that my dad was ahead of the game, drinking beers straight out of the cupboard, and I think that's where we're at right now.
Well, and if you get a good beer, you can. Again, I lived in the UK for a couple of years. I worked in a restaurant. The kegs were all just in a cold room. They weren't refrigerated, and you drank it at just slightly below room temperature, and it was all fine. There was no skunkiness to it. There was no sock taste. There was no ashtrays. None of that stuff. None of it was present, and it was because the beer was good. And if you come, if you come to Canada and take one of those, take a Molson Canadian. Try to drink it warm. My guess is if you've not had 6, you're not going to want to do that. Okay. Okay. So let's try this lager because
All right.
I put it last for a reason when I was shuffling the beer around. I actually love the nose on this.
It's still delicate.
It's very nice. But there's all kinds of sort of crackery notes and other things that are there.
And even with a bit of warmth, still getting really clean
Yeah.
malt bill on that.
To me, this is fine. This is fine. This is exactly what I would like from a lager. In fact, it's got a lot. It's quite a bit darker. Oh, Sky can pick that up here. I'll help you out, but it's quite a bit darker than you'd expect from a North American lager, which
This
would
is
be
the double hopped lager.
which would be very, very light. Okay, so this has got some color to it. And this is warm. Like, we're now drinking warm beer, folks. Like, we're taking one for the team.
And we're
then
complimenting it.
Then there's warm beer taking one for the team. And it's still, like, the foam in it is bonkers. For a warm beer. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing? CO2, come out of suspension. It'll be frothy, right, until you're done drinking it, too.
You were commenting on the hops profile in the first lager. Is that where you're going with this one?
I think the hops are, to me, like, this was the fun part. Now, what we're going to do tonight, just to make sure Clock Kent is observed and we're not wasting our time completely, is we're going to go back. Eric and I both like doing this. Kyle is a sort of rip through the list and get out the door because he's had a long day kind of host. But tonight, we're gonna go back to the India. We're gonna go back to that one. We're gonna go back to the India Pale Lager. I can get the difference for me between the two lagers is the end one. This Midsummer one is it's actually got a little bit more hop on it, and I'm confused by that. But it's got more legs. Like, it's just got a little bit more of that sort of crackeriness that I like in a lager, and it's also got that nice sharpness. Even warm.
Yes.
Yeah, they all do blend together a little bit, Chris. I think that is because I think if we got them to tell us what the hops were, which is impossible, you'd find that it's same. Right? That would be my guess. I'm getting absolutely no difference in that. So the fun part is when we go back and we do those two, so we go back and do this pale, the India Pale Lager, tell me if you taste any difference between that beer and what's in your glass right now.
This carbonation.
When you're ready.
You know what I mean? Fact or something like that is an assumption that they're making because the product is globally exported. That it needs to be propped up because they know it's going to sit on a shelf for close to a year before it's drank.
Maybe. Most of the beer that I've drunk in Europe is not heavily carbonated.
Right.
So this is really weird for a European beer. This is more like beer United States version 1986.
Right.
Like just pure pop bottle fizz stuff.
Out of control.
Yeah. Like, but the head retention is bizarre.
Right.
Like when cold, this one held head all the way to the bottom of my glass in a like tight ball. It was weird. Yeah. It's like, holy cow, that's amazing.
If it were necessary for those long distances, we'd see it with every European beer.
Yeah. And just don't.
No.
Okay, so hopefully everyone's now got the first one almost done.
And surely you've all moved to the 4-cup program that we promoted on our last tasting night.
There's no denying Eric's right on this one.
Oh, yeah.
As much as I love arguing with him, there's no...
You get to compare colors, you get to go back.
You get to do the whole thing. Okay, so I'm going to
absolutely.
put the American Dream back in there. And we're going to go again. And I'm going to see if I can get anything out of this. Like, is there any difference at all? I can still taste the first one.
Yeah.
There's less hop on the second one. Honest to God, there's less hop and there's less backbone. It is it tastes watery to me.
On two. On
Yeah,
the double
and that
hop
should
lager.
that should be the stronger of the two.
I'm getting richer taste.
Yeah.
I'm getting fruit leaves. It's reminding me to think about the hops, whereas that was an afterthought with the other one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows? But if we go back to that, it's supposed to be the same beer, just more hops in the second one. There's more hops in the last one. So for me, if we're ranking them, and I don't know, we should do ranks tonight, I think. I think that's fair.
While people are sorting out their ranks, should we talk about next week?
Yeah, we could do that.
Let me move my little
week.
cups out of the trademark out of the way. And Brave Noise, while a wonderful story, is not part of next week's tasting. We'll move these into position. How are we doing there, Sky? Excellent. All right. I was surprised to see this name. I'm happy to see this name. These 4 beers are out of Halifax. Good Robot Brewery. This is Brewery. Terry and I got to visit and have Good Robot beer back in probably it was 2012, 2013. They were just a wee little outfit selling their beer at the Halifax Farmers Market at the pier. They were doing growlers. I think they had some long neck bottles, but that it was just a little farmers market operation. They are certainly expanded and doing much busier business than back in those days. I'm excited about it. The first beer we have here is the Creature Feature IPA. Second one is the Tom Waits for No One. Wah, wah. Poor Rain Dog Bar. They were so careful with their beer and Tom Waits references so as to not get sued. And then this one just puts Tom's name right on the can.
Yeah.
Aw. Hang in there, Rain Dog Beer. I'll come visit you soon. Rain Dog Beer is the brew pub in Calgary that all the dishes and everything are Tom Waits song titles, and establishment made them more for Rain. That's the Tom Waits beer that they made for Rain Dogs.
Oh, sweet.
This is harder to read. Sorry, Uncle Giggles APA.
We've had a few of those before, APAs. So
Do you know the Uncle Giggles reference?
no,
No,
but we will have to have a.
that's a Flintstones reference.
We will have to be
No,
doing a bunch.
That is
it?
a Flintstones reference.
We'll-
The spend the night in the castle and to get his inheritance episode.
Oh,
Yeah, that's good. So we can see the front. So, yeah.
we will have to do a little bit of research should we get called into service again for next week.
No, I'm sure Kyle will be just fine. He's resting up.
We're
and
hoping.
Not throwing things at his TV right now. The last Good Robot beer, Diablo, is a Mexican lager
Oh, that'll
with
be fun.
lime and jalapeno.
That'll be fun.
So we're looking forward to these 3 beers. No, what do you think about jalapeno?
Oh, I love those.
Really?
I love those.
Yeah?
Yeah, like even the.
I'm
what
not
was
against
the-
savory. I like
No,
savory.
no. What was the beer that we had? The one that was chocolate and spicy.
Oh,
and
the
it's in-
Fuego?
The Fuego. I
Oh,
like
yeah,
that
yeah,
beer.
yeah.
Like on
Yeah.
first sip, it's a
Really?
bit like
Yeah.
and then they're like, oh, it's really good. And yeah, you get into it. It's,
usually-
it's a
okay,
bit kind of
okay.
crazy, but no, I actually like that
I
kind of
like it
stuff.
too.
Yeah,
All right.
Yeah, there's all kinds of good in that.
There was one from Cabin, I think, last summer that was just chilies for days.
Yeah,
And
I had that one.
It was
Yeah.
a lot. It would be amazing to cook with.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but-
with like a good meaty burger.
A pig out.
All
that
right,
kind of
all
thing.
right.
Oh, that'd be a good beer. That'd be a good
Do we
beer.
need to start introducing food to the Andrew Hilton tastings?
Well,
or-
we've talked
all right.
we talked about that
Some
2 years ago.
charcuterie going
But
on.
there was a charcuterie board there for a little while. But
Welcome to our ESB and fish and chips night.
Oh, that
Holy
would be
shut
good.
up.
That would be good.
Man, that rules.
Okay, so
All right. Next week,
Next week,
$20
$20
at Andrew Hilton.
get in. There's still lots available, but get in and
It
get
may
them,
or may
get
not
them
come
done.
with us. Oh,
No,
well,
no,
yeah.
that'll be fun.
Probably.
We just may or may not be your guests for the evening. All right, are we trying the second? Did you have some? Did we do that? We good?
We're in orders here.
Oh, rankings. That's what
Yeah,
We're rankings. We were in rankings.
Help us
So
out, folks.
for my rankings, I would go 4 is going to be number 1, and then actually it's going to be 3 is going to be number 2, and then the other 2, I'm just going to leave them at tied for I don't much care. Like they're just going to be like ellipse and then who cares?
We're not
So-
getting any rankings. We are getting John and Chris are feeling like the flavors or styles blend together. They're just too close. And Chris Hunt wanted a trigger warning before mentioning Fuego. Shudder.
Oh, it's
That's
not
a
that
bit
bad.
dramatic.
It's not that bad.
Chris also says, I think these would be good camping beers when you plan on drinking 24 over the course of a couple of days, Lord. And
they're-
don't want lucky loggers.
Yeah, they're 330 milliliters a can.
Cheaper than that.
Yeah, and this tasting was still $5
And
per
fresher.
can.
And
So,
fresher. Just
Yeah, I would say
now that we've had a taste of beers coming off the line that fast, it's going to make that long distance importing really unique and challenging.
Well,
and
I think what it does is highlights as much as anything that, that we get spoiled, right? We get fresh beer, we get good beer. I mean, this is an unusual circumstance. Like, I don't know how it is everywhere else, but because I've only, entered into beer scenes in 4 or 5 other major centers. We get gifted this kind of stuff all the time, and we forget that this is actually the way beer is for most other people all over the place. So John's got a rating in 4, and then who cares? So 2, 3, 4. I can't believe you put 2 second, John. Like, really? We're gonna argue about that one. How does 2 go second? Anyway, I don't argue. Kyle never argues. 2, 3, 1, same. 2, 3, 1. Yeah. It's fine. It's fine. We're not gonna argue there. But it is the. I mean, what would we like to see for a European beer that you're paying top dollar for? I'd like to see something I haven't seen before. I'd like to see a recipe that isn't gotten 20 years out of date. I'd like to see something that was a bit fresher, certainly from the distributor. So that's something that, again, the store would deal with. But luckily, they only brought enough in for the tasting. And we did check beforehand. Like, there was no, we're not purposely up here submarining anything. We asked if we could be truthful, and they said, thumbs up. You can be truthful. You can go for it. And I went, okay, because I have a really hard time if somebody asks me my opinion, and then I just give it. As my wife says, Craig doesn't have a great filter. So I'll just blurt it out. I'll be like, no, that's garbage.
All right. Who would you go to for a lager then?
Who would I go to for a lager?
You're pulling a lager off the shelf tonight. What do you grab?
Number 4, all day long.
No, not them.
Not them. Oh,
An Alberta lager.
An Alberta lager.
An Alberta lager.
Oh.
What are you taking home?
Oh, what would they take
I mean, you can
home?
take that home if you want.
I wouldn't take that home. No. I was looking for a lager.
Sorry, Devin.
The funny thing is, there aren't that many really good lager. There's some brilliant Pilsners out, though.
Yeah.
There's some brilliant Pilsners out. So I would go back to some of the Pils. And again, a Pilsner is a super hard style to brew. I mean, that's what really... I'm a nerd for this kind of stuff. I openly admit it. No holds barred there. But Pilsner's got nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Neither does a lager. But like, who brews a really good lager in Alberta? Well, lots of people do, I'm sure, but I just haven't had one lately.
Help me out in the comments, folks. What's your go-to Alberta
What's your
lager?
go-to? But I can sure
He's
pull up
weaseling on me
Pils.
here.
But I mean, but you've got such a the Pilsner as a style has got so much more width in it. Because you've got really good examples of Italian Pils, you've got really good example of German Pils, you've got Czech Pils all over the place, and you can get a really good one from Alberta breweries all day long, right? Whether it's 5 of Diamonds or over to the, to the stuff that's coming in from SYC. I mean, these are all great beers, and they're really good. I mean, it shows the craft that the brewers are putting into their brew, right? Like, they actually care that this is turning out perfectly, or really, it's not going to sell. It's going to be garbage, right? For a Pilsner, because they can't like dash some hops over a really crap recipe and tell you that it's some kind of India Pale Lager thing when your lager is A, more hoppy, and B, it's got more flavor generally. So that one would be a struggle for me. Anybody in the comments?
No, nobody's chiming in.
Terry says thanks.
That's the
That's the hook.
Thanks, babe.
Hey, we did it. We're
Is
at
it red light flashing?
40.
Our
we're at
takeaway here is
48 minutes.
celebrate how good we've got
Yeah,
it, having
pontificado.
incredible recipes coming into this city fresh in Alberta. And the other takeaway is, Mikkeller, get your house in order.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Devin's right. Pontificado, there's your Italian. Idle Hands, 5 of Diamonds, brilliant stuff. Pilsner, these are all, that was the taste. That was the first tasting I did on this channel was Pilsners.
Yeah.
And
Tail Gunner. It's the
Tail
decoction
Gunner,
mash.
yeah. Oh yeah, because that's like brewing for people that are sadistic. Decoction mashing. That's like crazy talk. But yeah, I mean, so next week we get a really good look at East Coast Canadian beer. I'm super excited to try that. I've never had anything from that brewery. So get in, tell your friends, get in here, get the tasting packs done. We've got a good number in here tonight, but
Talk to your maritime friends. Try and get a bag of dulse to go with this. Dulse is a salty seaweed that's peeled off of rocks along the coast in Nova Scotia. And best way to describe it is it tastes like licking the underside of a wharf, but in a good way.
and on that note, I think we can sign off.
There you go.
Anyways, I'm Craig.
And I'm Eric. Thank you so much from Andrew Hilton. We'll see you next week for the Good Robot beer tasting. Stay safe out there, take care, and get better, those of you who need to get better.
Beautiful.